Hello, I'm Jacob Grimm.
And I'm Wilhelm Grimm. And together,
We are the Brothers Grimm. We have come from 19th century Germany in our time machine to tell you some stories today.
Even though we're from Germany, you've probably noticed that we have British accents. This is because we picked it up during our travels.
And we are on tour promoting our latest collection of folk tales. You see, we are passionate about passing on these stories, language and values. We believe in the power of stories to connect people.
We were going to tell you some stories like Cinderella,
Pathetic.
Rumpelstiltskin,
Lame.
Snow White,
Boring.
Sleeping Beauty,
Oh, too sappy.
and Little Red Riding Hood.
Have mercy.
But we figured, who cares? No one will like these. They won't last.
So these stories that we're about to tell you are, what could we say? A bit more grim?
And so, without further ado, storytelling with the Brothers Grimm begins with the story Herr Korbes.
Once upon a time, there were a rooster and a hen who wanted to take a journey together. So the rooster built a handsome carriage with 4 red wheels and hitched 4 mice to it. The hen climbed aboard with the rooster, and they drove away together.
Not long afterwards, they met a cat who said, "Where are you going?"
The rooster answered, "We're on our way to see Herr Korbes' house."
"Take me with you," said the cat.
The rooster answered, "Gladly. Climb on behind so you won't fall off the front. Be careful not to get my red wheels dirty. Roll, wheels. Whistle, mice. We're on our way to Herr Korbes' house." Then a millstone came along, then an egg, then a duck, then a pin, and finally a needle. They all climbed aboard the carriage and rode with them. But when they arrived at Herr Korbes' house, he was not there. The mice pulled the carriage into the barn. The hen and the rooster flew onto a pole. The cat sat down in the fireplace, and the duck in the water bucket. The egg rolled itself up in a towel. The pin stuck itself into a chair cushion. The needle jumped into the bed in the middle of the pillow. The millstone lay down above the door.
Then Herr Korbes came home. He went to the fireplace, wanting to make a fire, and the cat threw ashes into his face. He ran quickly into the kitchen to wash himself, and the duck splashed water into his face. He wanted to dry himself off with the towel, but the egg rolled against him, broke, and glued his eyes shut. Wanting to rest, he sat down in the chair, and the pin pricked him. He fell into a rage and threw himself onto his bed, but when he laid his head on the pillow, the needle pricked him, causing him to scream and run out of the house. As he ran through the front door, the millstone jumped down and struck him dead. Herr Korbes must have been a very wicked man. Yay! Woo!
A very wicked man indeed. And now we'll hear about another wicked man in The Fowler's Fowl.
Once upon a time, there was a sorcerer who disguised himself as a poor man, went begging from house to house, and captured beautiful girls. No one knew where he took them, for none of them ever returned. One day, he came to the door of a man who had 3 beautiful daughters. He appeared to be a poor, weak beggar, and he carried a pack basket on his back, as though he wanted to collect some benevolent offerings in it. He asked for a bit to eat, and when the oldest daughter came out to give him a piece of bread, he simply touched her, and she was forced to jump into his pack basket. Then he hurried away with powerful strides and carried her to his house, which stood in the middle of a dark forest. Everything was splendid in the house, and he gave her everything she wanted. He said, "My dear, you will like it here with me. You will have everything that your heart desires." So it went for a few days, and then he said to her, "I have to go away and leave you alone for a short time. Here are the house keys. You may go everywhere and look at everything except for the one room that this little key here unlocks. I forbid you to go there on the penalty of death." He also gave her an egg, saying, "Take good care of this egg. You should carry it with you at all times, for if you should lose it, great misfortune would follow. She took the keys and the egg, and promised to take good care of everything.
As soon as he had gone, she walked about in the house from top to bottom, examining everything. The rooms glistened with silver and gold, and she thought that she had never seen such splendor. Finally, she came to the forbidden door. She wanted to pass it by, but curiosity gave her no rest. She examined the key. It looked like any other one. She put it into the lock and twisted it a little, and then the door sprang open. And what did she see when she stepped inside?
A large bloody basin stood in the middle, inside which there lay cut-up parts of dead girls. Nearby there was a wooden block with a glistening axe lying on it.
She was so terrified that the egg, which she was holding in her hand, fell into the basin. She got it out again and wiped off the blood, but it was to no avail. For it always came back. She wiped and scrubbed, but she could not get rid of the stain.
Not long afterward, the man returned from his journey, and immediately asked for the key and the egg. She handed them to him, shaking all the while, for he saw from the red stain that she had been in the blood chamber. "You went into that chamber against my will," he said, "and now against your will you shall go into it once again. Your life is finished." He threw her down, dragged her by her hair into the chamber, cut off her head on the block, and cut her into pieces, and her blood flowed out onto the floor. Then he threw her into the basin with the others. "Now I will go get the second one," said the sorcerer, and again, disguised as a poor man, he went into their house begging. The second sister brought him a piece of bread, and, as he had done to the first one, he captured her by merely touching her, and he carried her away. It went with her no better than it had gone with her sister. She let herself be led astray by her curiosity, opened the blood chamber, and looked inside. When he returned, she paid with her life. Then he went and captured the third sister, but she was clever and sly. After he had given her the keys and the egg, and had gone away, she carefully put the egg aside, then examined the house, entering finally the forbidden chamber.
Oh, what she saw! Her two dear sisters were lying there in the basin, miserably murdered and chopped to pieces. In spite of this, she proceeded to gather their parts together, placing them back in order. Head, body, arms, and legs. Then, when nothing else was missing, the parts began to move. They joined together, and the two girls opened their eyes and came back to life. Rejoicing, they kissed and hugged one another. When the man returned home, he immediately demanded the keys and the egg, and when he was unable to detect any trace of blood on them, he said, "You have passed the test. You shall be my bride." He now had no more power over her, and had to do whatever she demanded. "Good," she answered, "but first you must take a basket full of gold to my father and mother. You yourself must carry it there on your back. In the meanwhile, I shall make preparations for the wedding." Then she ran to her sisters, whom she had hidden in a closet, and said, "The moment is here when I can rescue you. The evildoer himself shall carry you home. As soon as you have arrived at home, send help to me." So she put them both into a basket, then covered them entirely with gold, so that nothing could be seen of them. Then she called the sorcerer in and said, "Now carry this basket away, but you are not to stop and rest on the way. Take care, for I shall be watching you through my little window." The sorcerer lifted the basket onto his back and walked away with it. However, it pressed down so heavily on him that the sweat ran from his face. He sat down, wanting to rest, but immediately one of the girls in the basket called out, "I am looking through my little window, and I can see that you are resting. Walk on!" He thought that his bride was calling to him, so he got up again. Then he again wanted to sit down, but someone immediately called out, "I am looking through my little window, and I can see that you are resting. Walk on!" Every time that he stopped walking, someone called out, and he had to walk on until, groaning and out of breath, he brought the basket with the gold and the two girls to their parents' house.
At home, the bride was making preparations for the wedding feast, to which she had had the sorcerer's friends invited. Then she took a skull with grinning teeth, adorned it with jewelry, and with a wreath of flowers, carried it to the attic window, and let it look out. When everything was ready, she dipped herself into a barrel of honey, then cut open the bed and rolled around in it until she looked like a strange bird, and no one would have been able to recognize her. Then she walked out of the house. On the way, some of the wedding guests met her, and they asked, "You, Fowler's bird, where are you coming from?" "I am coming from Fowler's house." "What is his young bride doing there?" "She has swept the house from bottom to top, and now she is looking out of the attic window." Finally, her bridegroom met her. He was walking slowly back home. Like the others, he asked, "You, Fowler's bird, where are you coming from?" "I am coming from Fowler's house." "What is my young bride doing there?" "She has swept the house from bottom to top, and now she is looking out of the attic window." The bridegroom looked up. Seeing the decorated skull, he thought it was his bride, and waved a friendly greeting to her.
After he and all his guests had gone into the house, the bride's brothers and relatives arrived. They had been sent to rescue her. After closing up all the doors of the house so that no one could escape, they set it afire, and the sorcerer, together with his gang, all burned to death.
The end.
Yay! But that story isn't nearly as harsh as what happens in this story, called the juniper tree. Long ago, at least 2,000 years, there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they loved each other dearly. However, they had no children, though they wished very much to have some, and the woman prayed for them day and night, but they didn't get any, and they didn't get any. In front of their house, there was a courtyard where there stood a juniper tree. One day in winter, the woman was standing beneath it, peeling herself an apple, and while she was thus peeling the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell into the snow. "Oh," said the woman. She sighed heavily, looking at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "If only I had a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And as she said that, she became quite contented, and felt sure that it was going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone. And 2 months, and everything was green. And 3 months, and all the flowers came out of the earth. And 4 months, and all the trees in the woods grew thicker, and the green branches were all entwined in one another, and the birds sang until the woods resounded and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed, and she stood beneath the juniper tree, which smelled so sweet that her heart jumped for joy, and she fell on her knees and was beside herself. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was thick and large, and she was quite still. And after the 7th month, she picked the juniper berries and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful. Well, then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and cried and said, "If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree." Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over. And then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she saw it, she was so happy that she died. Her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to cry bitterly. After some time, he was more at ease, and although he still cried, he could bear it. And some time later, he took another wife.
He had a daughter by the second wife, but the first wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but then she looked at the little boy, and it pierced her heart, for she thought that he would always stand in her way, and she was always thinking of how she could get the entire inheritance for her daughter. And the evil one filled her mind with this until she grew very angry with the little boy, and she pushed him from one corner to the other, and slapped him here and cuffed him there, until the poor child was always afraid, for when he came home from school, there was nowhere he could find any peace. One day the woman had gone upstairs to her room, when her little daughter came up too, and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a beautiful apple out of the chest. The chest had a large, heavy lid with a large, sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes home from school." When from the window she saw him coming, it was as if the evil one came over her, and she grabbed the apple and took it away from her daughter, saying, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the chest and shut it. Then the little boy came in the door, and the evil one made her say to him kindly, "My son, do you want an apple?" And she looked at him fiercely. "Mother," said the little boy, "how angry you look. Yes, give me an apple." Then it seemed to her as if she had to persuade him. "Come with me," she said, opening the lid of the chest. "Take out an apple for yourself." And while the little boy was leaning over, the evil one prompted her, and crash! She slammed down the lid, and his head flew off, falling among the red apples.
Then fear overcame her, and she thought, "Maybe I can get out of this." So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and took a white scarf out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, tying the scarf around and around so that nothing could be seen. Then she set him on a chair in front of the door, and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pot of hot water before her, which she was stirring around and around.
"Mother," said Marlinchen, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks totally white and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was very frightened."
"Go back to him," said her mother, "and if he will not answer you, then box his ears."
So Marlinchen went to him and said, "Brother, give me the apple." But he was silent. So she gave him one on the ear, and his head fell off. Marlinchen was terrified, and began crying and screaming, and ran to her mother and said, "Oh, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off." And she cried and could not be comforted.
"Marlinchen," said the mother, "what have you done? Be quiet and don't let anyone know about it. It cannot be helped now. We will cook him into stew."
Then the mother took the little boy and chopped him in pieces, put him in the pot, and cooked him into stew. But Marlinchen stood by crying, and all her tears fell into the pot, and they did not need any salt. Then the father came home and sat down at the table and said, "Where is my son?" And the mother served up a large dish of stew, and Marlinchen cried and could not stop. Then the father said again, "Where is my son?" "Oh," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great uncle. He will stay there a while." "What is he doing there?" "He did not even say goodbye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go, and asked me if he could stay 6 weeks. He will be taken well care of there." "Oh," said the man, "I am unhappy. It isn't right. He should have said goodbye to me." With that, he began to eat, saying, "Marlinchen, why are you crying? Your brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Wife, this food is delicious. Give me some more." And the more he ate, the more he wanted. And he said, "Give me some more. You two shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate and ate, throwing all the bones under the table, until he had finished it all.
Marlinchen went to her chest of drawers, took her best silk scarf from the bottom drawer, and gathered all the bones from beneath the table and tied them up in her silk scarf, then carried them outside the door, crying tears of blood. She laid them down beneath the juniper tree on the green grass, and after she had put them there, she suddenly felt better and did not cry any more. Then the juniper tree began to move. The branches moved apart, then moved together again, just as if someone were rejoicing and clapping his hands. At the same time, a mist seemed to rise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire. And a beautiful bird flew out of the fire, singing magnificently, and it flew high into the air, and when it was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the cloth with the bones was no longer there. Marlinchen, however, was as happy and contented as if her brother was still alive, and she went merrily into the house, sat down at the table, and ate. Then the bird flew away and lit on a goldsmith's house, and began to sing.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a golden chain when he heard the bird sitting on his roof and singing. The song seemed very beautiful to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers. However, he went right up to the middle of the street with only one slipper and one sock on. He had his leather apron on, and in one hand he had a golden chain, and in the other his tongs. The sun was shining brightly on the street. He walked onward, then stood still and said to the bird, "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you can sing. Sing that piece again for me."
No, said the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me the golden chain, and then I will sing it again for you.
The goldsmith said, "Here is the golden chain for you. Now sing that song again for me." Then the bird came and took the golden chain in his right claw, and went and sat in front of the goldsmith, and sang.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
Then the bird flew away to a shoemaker, and lit on his roof and sang.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them to a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
Hearing this, the shoemaker ran out of doors in his shirt sleeves, and looked up at his roof, and had to hold his hand in front of his eyes to keep the sun from blinding him. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully you can sing." Then he called in his door. "Wife, come outside. There is a bird here. Look at this bird. He certainly can sing." Then he called his daughter and her children, and the journeyman, and the apprentice, and the maid, and they all came out into the street and looked at the bird and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how his neck was like pure gold, and how his eyes shone like stars in his head. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing that song again for me."
No, said the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something.
"Wife," said the man, "go into the shop. There is a pair of red shoes on the top shelf. Bring them down." Then the wife went and brought the shoes. "There, bird," said the man, "now sing that piece again for me." Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw, and flew back to the roof and sang.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
When he had finished his song, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain, and in his left one the shoes. He flew far away to a mill, and the mill went clickety-clack, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. In the mill sat 20 miller's apprentices cutting a stone, and chiseling, chip-chop, chip-chop, chip-chop. And the mill went clickety-clack, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Then the bird went and sat on a tree, which stood in front of the mill, and sang.
My mother, she killed me.
Then one of them stopped working.
My father, he ate me.
Then 2 more stopped working and listened.
My sister, Marlinchen,
Then 4 more stopped.
gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf,
Now only 8 were chiseling.
laid them beneath
Now only 5.
the juniper tree.
Now only 1.
Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
Then the last one stopped also, and heard the last words. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing. Let me hear that too. Sing it once more for me."
No, said the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and then I will sing it again.
Yes, he said. If it belonged only to me, you should have it. Yes, said the others. If he sings again, he can have it. Then the bird came down, and the 20 millers took a beam and lifted the stone up. Yo, heave ho! Yo, heave ho! Yo, heave ho! The bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone on as if it were a collar, then flew to the tree again and sang.
My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
When he was finished singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left one the shoes, and round his neck the millstone. He flew far away to his father's house. In the room, the father, mother, and Marlinchen were sitting at the table. The father said, I feel so contented. I am so happy. Not I, said the mother. I feel uneasy, just as if a bad storm were coming. But Marlinchen just sat and cried and cried. Then the bird flew up, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, Oh, I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel as if I were about to see some old acquaintance again. Not I, said the woman. I am so afraid that my teeth are chattering, and I feel like I have fire in my veins. And she tore open her bodice even more. Marlinchen sat in a corner crying. She held a handkerchief before her eyes and cried until it was wet clear through. Then the bird seated itself on the juniper tree and sang.
My mother, she killed me.
The mother stopped her ears and shut her eyes, not wanting to see or hear. But there was a roaring in her eyes like the fiercest storm, and her eyes burned and flashed like lightning.
My father, he ate me.
Oh, mother, said the man, that is a beautiful bird. He is singing so splendidly, and the sun is shining so warmly, and it smells like pure cinnamon.
My sister, Marlinchen.
Then Marlinchen laid her head on her knees and cried and said, and cried and cried and cried, but the man said, I am going out. I must see the bird up close. Oh, don't go, said the woman. I feel as if the whole house was shaking and on fire. But the man went out and looked at the bird.
Gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
With this, the bird dropped the golden chain, and it fell right round the man's neck, so exactly around that it fit beautifully. Then the man went in and said, Just look at what a beautiful bird that is, and what a beautiful golden chain he has given me, and how nice it looks. But the woman was terrified. She fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then the bird sang once more.
My mother, she killed me.
I wish I were 1,000 fathoms beneath the earth, so I would not have to hear that.
My father, he ate me.
Then the woman fell down as if she were dead.
My sister, Marlinchen.
Oh, said Marlinchen, I too will go out and see if the bird would give me something. Then she went out.
Gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken scarf.
He threw the shoes down to her.
Laid them beneath the juniper tree. Tweet, tweet, what a beautiful bird am I.
Then she was contented and happy. She put on the new red shoes and danced and leaped into the house. Oh, she said, I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so contented. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes. No, said the woman, jumping to her feet and with her hair standing up like flames of fire. I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if it makes me feel better. And as she went out the door, crash! The bird threw the millstone on her head, and it crushed her to death. The father and Marlinchen heard it and went out. Smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, the little brother was standing there, and he took his father and Marlinchen by the hand. And all three were very happy. And they went into the house, sat down at the table, and ate. Yay! Woo.
Jacob, we can't end our compilations with such a happy tale. It'll send the wrong message.
Then I have just the tale for us to tell. The Death of the Little Hen.
One time, the little hen and the little rooster went to Nut Mountain, and they agreed that whoever would find a nut would share it with the other one. Now, the little hen found a large nut, but, wanting to eat the kernel by herself, she said nothing about it. However, the kernel was so thick that she could not swallow it down. It got stuck in her throat, and fearing that she would choke to death, she cried out, "Little rooster, I beg you to run as fast as you can to the well and give me some water, or else I'll choke to death." The little rooster ran to the well as fast as he could and said, "Well, give me some water, for the little hen is lying on Nut Mountain. She swallowed a large nut kernel and is about to choke to death on it." The well answered, "First run to the bride and get some red silk from her." The little rooster ran to the bride. "Bride, give me some red silk, and I'll give the red silk to the well, and the well will give me some water, and I'll take the water to the little hen who is lying on Nut Mountain. She swallowed a large nut kernel and is about to choke to death on it." The bride answered, "First run and get my wreath. It got caught on a willow branch." So the little rooster ran to the willow and pulled the wreath from its branch and took it to the bride. And the bride gave him some red silk, which he took to the well, which gave him some water. And the little rooster took the water to the little hen, but when he arrived, she had already choked to death, and she lay there dead and did not move at all.
The little rooster was so sad that he cried aloud, and all the animals came to mourn for the little hen. 6 mice built a small carriage which was to carry the little hen to her grave. When the carriage was finished, they hitched themselves to it, and the little rooster drove. On the way they met the fox. "Where are you going, little rooster?" "I'm going to bury my little hen." "May I ride along?" "Yes, but you must sit at the rear, because my little horses don't like you too close to the front." So he sat at the rear, and then the wolf, the bear, the elk, the lion, and all the animals in the forest. They rode on until they came to a brook. "How can we get across?" said the little rooster. A straw was lying there next to the brook, and he said, "I'll lay myself across, and you can drive over me." But just as the 6 mice got onto the straw, it slipped into the water, and the 6 mice all fell in and drowned. They did not know what to do until a coal came and said, "I am large enough. I will lay myself across, and you can drive over me." So the coal laid itself across the water, but unfortunately it touched the water, hissed, and went out, and it was dead. A stone saw this happen, and wanting to help the little rooster, it laid itself across the water too. The little rooster pulled the carriage himself. He nearly reached the other side with the dead little hen, but there were too many others seated on the back of the carriage, and the carriage rolled back, and they all fell into the water and drowned.
Now the little rooster was all alone with the dead little hen. He dug a grave for her and laid her inside. Then he made a mound on top and sat on it, and grieved there so long that he too died. And then everyone was dead. The end.